From the first days in my life, I believed in brotherhood, a bond between men of like-minded people. And it started at St. John's the Evangelist in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. And in the 70s, it was important to have a strong moral fabric. Do your baptism, your communion, your confirmation, all along which you're raised in the faith, which is centered on a lot of symbology. And when I asked my parents about my name, and they told me I was named after St. Michael, and I asked why, and they said to stand up for what's right. And my brother Joseph had that, named after St. Joseph, a square, a plane. And I'm sure he takes on his mantle as I do, raised in that belief and that faith. He does make things smooth. He makes sure they're correct, that things are aligned, and I always looked at him as a very, very balanced man. I've always been envious of him. Not that we all don't have disagreements, but that's the nature of things when you're different, and the beauty of humanity. I didn't take being named after St. Michael just as a name. I believed in the values and the morals of the Catholic Church, as most kids who were raised in the Catholic faith are, especially in a private Catholic school. But I would say that having a patron saint with the shield on his forearm and a sword in his hand, standing on the top of a serpent, representing the devil, that kind of is going to be a controversial figure. I wished I had the olive branch or the bird on my shoulder like the Franciscans, being raised in a Catholic private school. And as we know, all Catholic schools are pretty much ran by the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church. And I know that at that time, on those levels, at the community level, the church was a solid organization, and probably still is today. In fact, I know it is. Whatever the larger scale of things is, I have no idea. But I stood on the values and the attributes of St. Michael. Don't help being born in October. You look to the heavens and you see the sign of the Libra disappearing on the horizon in the Western Hemisphere and arising on the East. And you look at Libra and it's almost the same thing. A sword in her right hand in the scale of justice on the left. Double trouble. Just a matter of time before I was wrestling, because what other sport would St. Michael have? And started at 9 years old, wrestled through the YMCA in junior high school, started as a varsity in high school with my brother at the 187-pound weight class and myself at the 132 for our first year. Wrestling on a team with him, such an honor and a privilege. Playing baseball on the same team with him in Mugga Vista in Anne Arundel County also. Nothing but privilege. We moved down to North Carolina, north of Wilkesboro. They had just murdered our priest. We had moved to the Bible Belt because of economics and my father's health. Running from a cancerous asbestos trade with Owens Corning and the unions, just to get away and go to the mountains and start a simple life back over again. Here I am repeating what my father did. Going back to a simpler life. I guess lately I've seen a tear in the moral fiber, because the same honor and privileges that I've seen being raised as a Catholic, Boy Scouts, YMCA, wrestling. My mother and father ensured I was well adapted to religion, physical activity. I want to restate that. Faith, physical activity, and academics. Academics, I would say that's my brother's side. We all deal with the cards we have. I no doubt ended up in the Army, fought 5 wars. And this fabric just recently started tearing, where you start to see it really close, and it's like a child growing up. You don't realize it until it's in your face that, oh my God, where did the time go? And then you get to a point where where did the morality go? What is truth anymore? And what is the moral fabric of America that binds us together as Americans? When you look at the Code of Conduct and you go in the Army and it says and of course the Code of Conduct has changed to be more gender neutral, but in 1980, I believe I'm an American fighting in the forces which guard our country and our way of life. I am willing to give my life in their defense. Now, if you stop at that first paragraph of the Code of Conduct and you look at that, you're sent to serve, to protect the American way of life. How do you do that? Well, you take an oath. I, Michael Huffman, your name, whatever it is at the recruiting office, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I will obey the orders of the officers appointed over me and the orders of the President of the United States, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. And so when you look at that, you have to realize that we all have a responsibility, a moral obligation to preserve the American way of life. You see that in the Code of Conduct. And what started happening as we were going overseas, protecting the American way of life while the American way of life was being attacked by demons in the United States. And here we are. Once that fabric torn, it's like dry rotted jungle pants when you're out on patrols for 3 weeks, and they just rot and they pull right off of you. And it's that first little tear at a seam that the rest of it just pulls away without any resistance whatsoever. And it's impermeated into organizations that we believe in: the Army, the Armed Forces, our police departments, our churches, any club or organization that you belong to. For me, motorcycle club. For you, it may be a car club. It may be a chess club. It may be a pinochle club. But those are all community circles, and they're all held by the same fabric of beliefs and a value system. And once that value system is torn, well, it's hard to mend. And sometimes it doesn't look the same. But you can make it stronger. I don't know when that is, when that's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And I don't know what's right and what's wrong sometimes, but I do know the 10 Commandments, and I do know that you're not supposed to lie. You're not supposed to covet another person's wife. You're not supposed to steal. And I know I could go on for the 10 Commandments and do the obvious, kill and all that stuff. But when Jesus came and he said, I leave you 2 commandments: love God, put no one else before him. And then the second was love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if you do that, you're helping him out. You're giving shelter to people when they need shelter. You're giving food to people when they need food. You're giving comfort. You're giving security. You're giving conversation, you're giving time, and in some cases you're giving money, and some people do all of that. And it's necessary to keep the moral fabric of the country strong and mended, maintained, continue its serviceability. But I'm finding myself falling. We fell back here on Sundance Ranch, and now we're going to be starting another ranch, probably in North Carolina, a tree farm, in my father's name and honor. But peel back the falsehoods and the lies, and finding the truth requires an enormous amount of patience and tolerance. And I will tell you, I don't think I could do it until I was retired, because you have time to reflect on your actions. You're not simply reacting, you're implementing, you're planning. I was in the service for 40 years. Every strategic plan, which was 3 to 5 years out, was always changed by an incoming commander, because the command teams only lasted 2 years. Constantly changing directions, never staying focused on the same thing. Not having no loyalty and no respect to the men before you that have already taken you so far in an organization. By developing a constitution, by developing a uniform code of military justice, by developing Army regulations, by developing standard operating procedures and rules of orders in your clubs, your organizations, your government. They have to be followed equally by everyone, not only in deeds, but in spirit. You should aggressively try to enforce good moral conduct from all your members. Faith in each other, trust in each other. When you lose trust in the government, when you lose trust in the organizations that have lost vision of their SOPs, when you believe in a country that's lost vision in its constitution, the problem's not the country. The problem's not the organization. those are still there. They still have the same rules and standards. What's changed is the people in them. And the people in them do not have the will and the strength, because it is hard. It's all not foaming beer and girls sliding down poles and walks on the beach and trips to the lake. It's work time involved in that. And that work is making the right decisions the first time. And then if you make a wrong decision, stop, admit it, ask for forgiveness, get back to your moral code, and continue on. But somewhere between breaking that first rule, nobody's going back. No one's admitting defeat, because our egos get in the way. Well, let's not say me admitting defeat, because you're going to leave all these organizations because they're man-made. It's just an evolvement of time. I mean, you grow out of things. You grow out of your clothes, and as you grow socially, as you grow intellectually, you'll outgrow those organizations that have left you behind. But there needs to be another place that you can go, and that place is to yourself and with close family and friends, because there's still bonds out there. They're just harder to find. It's hard to find people that will adhere to the rules of an organization. And it's hard to find people that will enforce the spirit of the organization, which means going aggressively pursuing those rules to ensure the integrities so that we can move forward as a society. Because once we lack the commitment, once we lack the intestinal fortitude to enact rules and regulations that are good for the organization, enforce rules and regulations, and amend rules and regulations, that's the right way. It's not by ignoring them. It's not by ignoring the Constitution of the United States. If you got a problem with it, amend it. If you got the votes, legally. Abraham Lincoln said, we have the right to, we have the constitutional right to amend it, the Constitution, when it no longer serves the people, or we have the revolutionary right to overthrow it. And fortunately for us, we've never had to worry about the second but one time. And corruption has eaten every organization, and it has stolen the bonds of brotherhood, fatherhood, motherhood, family, faith. Our children don't know what to do with us. And if I was in your organization, I've left your organization, hey, you know what? I owe you a thank you, because I've grown to see things that I couldn't see before, and learn things about myself. And I've learned that you can't put your trust in man unless those men have trust in God. And it goes back to what my father told me when he converted from a Protestant to a Catholic. And I asked him why, because it's all the same. It's all the same God and stuff, So for me, it's just like a vehicle. The way you get there, it's not important. I go with my girlfriend to a Methodist church. I'm a Catholic, but hey, you know what? I don't like to wear a mask, so I'm going to her church now. It's the same God over there, just a different roof, a different facade on the front, a different name. Why? Because men had to be better than God and the church before them, and they have to change things, and they have to make things their own. Why? So they can control things. Because true power corrupts. And as you move up in any organization, there is an irresistible to improve your own economical and financial standings and social standings. You know? One organization is following a standard, another organization under the same mantle of a constitution or SOP or bylaws or whatever, completely different from each other now. Fighting in-house, pulling on each other because we're men. And as men, we're greedy. Was I always this moral? Hell no. Hell no. You know, I compromise my integrity to stay alive just like most people are doing, but there comes a point, you know, and I told my people before I left the Sergeant's Major Academy, I gathered them together in my office and I said, look, I'm fortunate to be able to leave this corruption by saving and investing to find my own way out, because your own way out is your own independence, your own financial independence, or your own independence through resourcefulness. Because until you can do that, you're never going to be able to make a moral decision. Every decision is going to be made monetarily to survive, to improve for you and your family. But in reality, we're not connected with God anymore. I remember when I went in the Army, I was a drill sergeant in 87. I would ask, people how many people they believed in God, how many people of them were Catholics, because I taught a lot about Islam and the differences, especially since our soldiers would end up fighting over it. So I got very interested in the culture, understanding the people. When I left, I would ask the soldiers that I were having volunteer to sponsor students from foreign countries, a lot of them from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Islamic countries, and I would give them a class about Islam, about the differences between Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims, and how it all came about, and, the history of it all, and their literature, and look for good sponsors. And when you peel back everything, the same God was there. I mean, most of the books in the New Testament are the same stories that are in the Quran. There are differences that, and I believe men made these differences, not a divine spirit. It's men, and men are influenced by evil. And until you get to a situation in your life where you're no longer greedy, you're not going to understand that. And for everybody, it comes at a time. I'm a late bloomer. It comes for me at 58. I mean, really, how many organizations of man did I find fault in before I realized my relationship is with the woman that I'm going to be with the rest of my life? That is the companion that God gave me. And I'm going to do my best to care for animals and plants that He's left here for us to live off of, and grow them the way He intended them to be grown, in the time it takes to grow them properly and safely. And I ask His guidance in everything I'm doing. And I hope the people that are around me that know me and really love me for who I was and how I treated them, I hope they find peace and individuality. I know I'm egotistical too, and I'm, what do they call me, a narcissist, yeah. So maybe I am all those things. I'm not perfect. I think my biggest sin is I take action. And some people call it impulsiveness. And I call tolerant people that are under control. And they call me out of control. But I'm not out of control with God. I'm out of control with the men that God put in charge of, that man put in charge of me. Not what God has done. And I'm not a religious fanatic. Everybody knows me. I am a sinner. Boy, I hope I find my way, because I don't even know if I'm going to make it or not. I don't know if I'm going to make it or not to heaven, if there is a heaven. But there doesn't even need to be a God for me to know that I shouldn't hurt people, that I shouldn't kill people without reason, that I shouldn't want to sleep with someone else's lady, or their, God forbid, do something to their children. I mean, these are things that happen in organizations that have allowed demons to slip in amongst them. And they need to purge themselves of it, just like we need to purge ourselves of it in this country. This is a Judeo-Christian founded society. If you don't like it, get out. But don't try to change us, because we're Judeo-Christians. And we'll tolerate you, and we'll tolerate anything. But when it starts to destroy every facet of our life, our military, our constitutional authority government, when the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial branch are trying to run the country separately and independently instead of working together. And that's happening in every organization, because the men feel that their calling is more important than anyone else's calling. Just like our Hollywood superstars. And every person needs people to acknowledge their relevance. I mean, including me. I'm hoping that people find some peace in the videos I post up, some understanding. I believe right now, I'm being told to stand still and wait. Improve your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. Prepare for the unthinkable. And in the meantime, abide by the rules of your organizations and your societies. It's not the rules that are messed up. It's the people. And if you fall into complacency by standing on the outside as an observer, pointing your finger and judging, waiting to make a decision on things because you're afraid to stand out away from others because of a man-made symbol, whether it's on the wall as a crucifix or on your back as in a club, or a funny-looking hat from the VA, or whatever it is. You know, those institutions are good institutions. And you have to go through them to get to where you have to be. So join them. I completely support them. But they're only going to be helpful if they continue to operate in a fashion that they were designed. Remember your organization's SOPs, your constitutions. It's survived years and years of tests. And lately, everything's fallen apart. Everything from the YMCA to the Boy Scouts of America, to the churches, to our military, to our faith in the president and the office of the president at this point. Whoever sitting in it, and their ability to control things or not control things, and what their intents are. Is their intent the same intent as we have? To live in peace and equality? Or is their intent to rule us and to enslave us with a monetary system. Do you need to work 40 hours a week just to eat? How are you going to, what time do we have left for our spiritual side? And if we did, would we be doing what we're doing? And like I say, I'm at an advantage. I'm retired now, and I can say these things, but you're going to find that organizations are going to let you down. Don't be angry. You will be. Well, I call it lamenting, because anger is one thing, but when you lament, it's a little different. It's mourning plus trying to make things right and just. And things do need to be made right and just, because the only way things can be repaired, the only way the fabric can be sewn back together and mended to be stronger than the way it was before, or at least as strong, is to set examples and standards. Well, no, I'm not even going to say set examples and standards. Just follow the standards that are already there in your own documentation, and have the strength to do something when everyone else won't. And if they don't, and they don't follow, you may have, the clothes might be too tight, too restrictive now. Maybe you got to take them off and move on to another thing. Maybe the grub has to become the June bug, or the larvae has to become a butterfly. I don't know. But it can't be anything worse than brothers killing each other, their family members colluding with people of bad intentions and deceit and shame and adultery and such. I mean, get it right, man. Got to get it right. There's a difference between being bad and being badass. You have to know those differences. You have to look in the mirror and go, hey, I'm a badass because I stand up for what's right, no matter how much it costs me, no matter how much I'm isolated. You know what? It's like the birthing pain. It's like when you're watching a cow and you're there with them, and that's the problem. Too many of our kids don't see animals go through the labors of birth, and they don't see death like you do with a stillborn calf, or a foal that didn't make it, chickens that got raided. But those things do shape us and make us respect life and teach us how to protect and preserve our flocks, our herds, our colonies. I'm talking about rabbits with colonies, but if you're into the know, you're into the know. Are we good shepherds? Are we good shepherds? I'm not. There's only one shepherd, and we should all just be walking to him.